Well, howdy, friends, and welcome back. It's been a while since the Winder and Eddie show has launched anything, so it's good to be with you, Mr. Eddie Stone. How are you, sir?
That's my parade wave since
Hey,
it's
you,
the
you and the Queen.
yeah, it's the holiday season, right? Every little small town in America and other places have holiday parades, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Probably there may be one for Yom Kippur. I don't know,
This
but
is good. This is good. Okay,
yeah, it's that time of the year.
today we wanted to focus a little bit on the zeolites because I think in the world of nutrition and in the world of health, zeolites are a phenomenon. I don't know of anything else in nature that is biologically inert, has only one function in the body, and that is to act like liquid flypaper for toxins, is excreted within 6 hours, has no interaction with your body biologically in any way except to take out what should not be there in the first place. What else is like that?
I don't know. I mean, if I did, I would definitely try to go out there and make a comparison to see how it worked against. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, number one, our bodies are so phenomenal, right? And then to find this natural mineral that can complement that process of detox, which is so critical, right? I mean, we just live in a world where, just like thinking about getting micronutrients in your diet, you need to think about detoxification, because you just can't, there's just no way to get away from it, right? I mean, you can be in the mountainside in Montana, but that jet stream is still carrying pollutants from Asia and other places, into your air. So it's just a part of life. And so the strategy is important.
Someone said to me one time that there are literally trillions of particles of heavy metal in our body of all sorts. I mean, we banned leaded fuel for cars, excuse me, quite a long time ago, but not for airplanes. So we're getting rained on all the time.
Sure.
That we have trillions of particles of heavy metals in our systems, and they clog the entrances to the entrance ports to our cells, denying proper function. So the way I have come to think of it is, it seems like if you get the trash out, everything is going to amp up in terms of effective functionality for your body.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's exactly the way to think about it. So I just sort of generally refer to heavy metals, environmental pollutants, such as volatile organics, obesogens that are coming from plastics and things like this. They're just disruptors to our body's systems. They disrupt the hormonal functions. They interfere and disrupt the proper function of your thyroid. And so these body systems, whether we're talking about your central nervous system, your immune system, all these things are disrupted and can't possibly work properly. No different than if you've got an automobile that you've never really changed the oil or the air filter or the oil filter. So you've got all this debris that's going to disrupt the function of the car. Well, same thing in your body. If you just sort of think about, I'm 56 years old. And so, I've got this lifetime, and at this point, a fairly lengthy lifetime, which I hope is even lengthier to come. But, there's an accumulation because there's a body burden that takes place. You can just only, when you're bombarded like we are in our society. Now, I don't live in a big city where I've got that concentration, but I'm not 10 miles from a really heavy agricultural area where they use crop dusters. So in my own way, I've got my exposure, and so do you, right? Even though in your lovely rural area where you live, it's still there because
Everywhere.
Yeah, you just can't get away from it. It's in the air, it's in the water, it's in the soil. So now, instead of being frightened of it, not that we shouldn't try to do something about it, it's a question of just managing it and
Right.
and really positioning yourself so it has the least impact on how you age and how you handle the cough and cold and flu seasons. I mentioned the word obesogens, which is this sort of new category of chemicals that disrupt your body's ability to maintain and manage proper weight. So it has to be accounted for. And for anybody that's serious about their health, if they're not accounting for the fact that environmental pollutant is a part of the program that you have to deal with, then they're not going to optimize their health, right? They're not going to live sort of optimally from a health, nutrition, longevity standpoint.
I am asked frequently why we have two zeolites, and I the way I sort of lay it out is that one is the sort of viscous liquid that is engineered and designed to stay in, starting with the excuse me, the mouth and the esophagus and the stomach and the colon and the intestines, and just sort of get out the big chunky junk that stays in that area. How would you describe it?
Well, I mean, that's pretty good, right? So the way we think of it internally is one is really a gut detox, and principally useful for gut health, and really then it's going to have a high impact on your immune system, because the health of your digestive system, your gut and your bowel probably is 40 to 60% of the impact on how well your immune system functions, right? Because you're getting so much from your biome. And of course, if the biome is polluted, then the biome can't work properly. So Pure Body Regular is what we're referring to as really this gut-focused product, because the way it works in the body, size matters. Size matters in every way possible. And so if the particle size, so 0.4 microns is the general size of Pure Body Regular. It's the mean average size. So you're going to have some smaller, some particles larger. But at that 0.4 micron size, the bulk of that material is going to stay in the gut. The smaller pieces will migrate out of the gut into this soft tissue in the bloodstream, but the bulk of it's going to stay in the gut. And that's exactly what we want to do, because there it's going to have a high impact on helping to balance your pH. And it's going to draw to itself, just like it does in the bloodstream or at the cellular level, just in a bigger particle. It's going to draw to itself those positively charged heavy metals, cadmium, lead, mercury, those things we really don't want in our body. In addition to the volatile organics that are, positively charged, right? And so once those things become bound either to the surface or in the cage of the zeolite, they're going to evacuate, just like you said, probably a 4 to 6 hour period, assuming sort of just normal renal function. And if it's smaller than that, such as our Pure Body Extra, which is nano size, right? Now we're talking about a whole different animal. It's not going to stay in the gut, right? So that's why it has to be two separate products, because of just the disposition that your body takes towards that size.
So the smaller, the nano size that you mentioned, I sort of think of it that, it's going to go everywhere in the body that water goes, which is literally everywhere.
Literally everywhere.
And in particular in the brain. Now, I heard something yesterday. Somebody was telling me that in all autistic children, the studies are showing that they're all high in aluminum. Have you heard that particular statistic before, or that info?
I haven't. I don't know that particular piece that you're referencing, but I'm not surprised by it, right? Because you hear often that the kids dealing with issues on the spectrum, it's complicated by how their bodies manage toxins, particularly heavy metals, particularly in that category, mercury. And so I don't think I'm surprised by that. I just hadn't seen that paper, but that's just sort of this constant drumbeat in the background, is that their body, in terms of managing environmental pollutions, heavy metals, things like that, just apparently don't appear to function as well at dealing with it.
So they have some sort of genetic issue, maybe that that predisposes them to not detoxifying heavy metals properly. Therefore, we have accumulations. Therefore, that could be the root cause of autism and that sort of issue.
I have seen that speculation, Winder. I can't say definitively that I understand that, or I've seen something that makes a definitive statement about that, but that appears to be sort of this direction that the literature is going to say, hey, there's something there about heavy metals and environmental pollutions. It's causing this disruption in the sort of normal function of their body. two people side by side, one person, same exposure to heavy metals, environmental pollution, one person manages it, doesn't have as much of an impact on their health. Another person becomes chemically sensitive and they're debilitated by it. Now, is that based upon their individual biology from their parents or something, or is it genetic or gene based? That part I don't know. I don't know that I've read anything that's really definitive in that regard, but I think that's the plausible answer.
So we have this this epidemic. What is it now? It's 1 in 50 kids or more in this country are challenged by being on the spectrum.
Yeah, I think that's the last figure I saw, and I wonder when I see something like that, is that because we're better able to diagnose it now, and so we understand it? Has it always been that number, and we just weren't able to really pinpoint what the problem was? Maybe we refer to it as something else, or has that number and percentage of kids that have issues with autism and they're on the spectrum, has that increased as the industrialization of our society and environmental pollutions have increased? So I don't know that they fully connected those dots yet, but it's worrisome.
We're having a little bit of an unstable connections. Part of what you said bleeped out there. But the gist of this is that we have seen just remarkable changes in people if they have been adversely affected with heavy metals, and if they have settled, I'm speculating, in the brain, because that's probably a likely scenario, since the brain is fat and the body tends to store toxins in fat. And when you get that out, all of a sudden we see these remarkable things happen. And while you can't ever guarantee anything or promise anything, it seems to me that it's a pretty hopeful situation that we have something that is engineered and designed to remove things that aren't supposed to be there, that have great potential to cause harm.
Agreed, right? Anything that you can use to encourage the body to detox, including things like our super green juice, right? Unless you're just going to do that yourself with a diet of deep green leafy vegetables. Greens aid the body just like zeolites aid the body in detoxification. It's just a good idea, right? It's a good idea to encourage that as a part of your health habits.
I think it would be, I keep going back to this point because I think it's important that people understand zeolites are not a nutrient. They are a detox agent, period. Whereas greens are in fact a nutrient, and that's a different pathway toward the same objective.
That's why they work so well together, right? It's two separate mechanisms of action, all sort of looking to achieve and encourage the same goal from a health and nutrition standpoint. And so that's one of the reasons they're complementary. I mean, the way we look at it, you've got the superfoods category, right, which has its benefits to the body. You've got the CBD products, which help to bring about homeostasis and some balance to your endocannabinoid system. And then the zeolites, right? We it's by design to work with those three areas because they complement each other in the body.
I'm also noticing these things work as well on pets as they do on people. If you have a dog or a cat, would you just put some of the Pure Body or Pure Body Extra just in their water?
Well, we do have a dog, Boomer, who is perhaps higher on the family totem pole than the kids or myself to Maria, who's ultimately in charge. And then Sawyer, my daughter, she's got a cat, right? And both of these pets are zeolites every day as well as CBD. And on occasion, Boomer's been known to get the remnants of a greens drink, which he enjoys. And so we believe there's great benefit there across the board. Particularly, pets have an endocannabinoid system just like human beings. Pets can become toxic. We read about pets that go into their yard and they eat a mushroom that the owner wasn't watching. They eat a poisonous mushroom and it can cause liver failure and they can die. So they're susceptible in the ways that we are to toxins in the environment. And so there's plenty of occasions. I mean, having worked with zeolites since 2005, which is, a fair amount of time, right, to sort of make some observation. Some of the best stories I've heard are people's pets. And,
we have a
and
great
what's
one.
nice about that is you can have somebody say, well, there's a placebo effect.
Uh-uh.
So a human being has a placebo effect, but pets can't have a placebo effect, right? There's no placebo effect to a pet because they're just consuming something. They don't know what they're consuming. So that's one of the sort of interesting confirmations.
It's hard to talk them into it.
It's hard to
I've
talk them
tried.
into it.
Yeah, we had a great story with our cat recently. She had an issue, and the CBD oil just turned her around literally in days. And
Yeah.
what was a very serious situation. So that's why I brought up pets. And I was thinking about the same thing with the zeolites, and how these things are just effective on all mammals, and probably other creatures too. I don't know, but pretty interesting stuff. So, and I would just, sometimes people ask me, is there a downside to this? And I say, the only thing that has to be watched with the zeolites, in my experience, is that it can precipitate sometimes detox response, Alzheimer response. And I had a really interesting situation with that recently. We involved a guy who was an MD, longtime alternative MD, and he went through a 3-day detox, and he was thrilled because he knew what was going on, and he just didn't believe it. He wasn't, I think he was thinking that he was, beyond it, or, wasn't going to do that to him. Well, so how do you just talk about that just for a moment and try to put it in proper context?
Well, we don't, at the company, and we're heavily monitor what people are calling in and saying to customer service or chatting or email. And if someone talks about, hey, I used this and this happened to me, we make note of that as a part of our good manufacturing practice, record keeping, and compliance with all the FDA rules regarding supplements and nutrition. We really don't get many calls with people saying, I'm having some type of detox experience that you might say is negative. I mean, the most I'll have folks that call in and say, I'm a little more thirsty than normal. I found I had a little bit of a leg cramp. And we just say, hey, have you been drinking water at the same pace you normally would? And very often they'll say, well, no, I haven't. And so they just got a little dehydrated. And whether that would have happened regardless, we don't know. But the zeolite is encouraging them probably to increase their urination. So in that regard, we tell them just drink some water, but we don't really hear very much otherwise. On occasion, I'll be in the field and somebody said, for a little period of time, I had a few extra pimples or something, but it's just so infrequently that it's not even something really to make a note of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just, when I introduce somebody to it, I just tell them pretty much exactly the same thing. Make sure you drink plenty of water. And the beauty of this stuff is that if you start having any sort of detox, it's easy to mitigate because you just take less, and then work your way back up again. It's pretty straightforward stuff, being drops and spray. It's easy to deal with. So go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we do have people that will say, man, I just had an intense response, but they don't describe it with a physical manifestation, right? So they were really tired. I've heard that on occasion.
Yes.
And so that's what we do say, just use less, until you find that equilibrium where your body is comfortable and you can sort of observe that process as it takes place.
Well, I think this is something vitally important. I think that I've actually heard some physicians and scientists, or read rather, them saying that in their view, as much as 80+% of all of our illnesses, diseases, and conditions have their root cause in toxicity. If that's true, this is invaluable to a large part of our population.
Yeah, and I've heard the same thing. And if you look at disease rates post and pre-industrial revolution and things like that, it's different types of diseases. And it does seem today the things that occur to us are the things that are damaging our DNA, cell mutation, which, we can definitely look at heavy metals and environmental pollutants, just look at how they impact people. Let's take lead, for example. Even though we've gotten lead out of the general automobile gasoline, it's made its way into the water supply. right? We can think about Flint, Michigan a few years ago, and we know that heavy metals, particularly lead, can actually cause people to score lower on IQ test, right? So there's definitely an impact in how it's affecting people. And so it is critical to be conscious of it.
Yeah. And again, if folks are watching this, we're having a little bit of an internet interrupt. And so our voices, the lips may not exactly sync up with the sound, but roll with it. Anyway, well, it's a fascinating topic, and we could talk on it for a very long time. But the only downside of taking this stuff is that you won't become a statistic too early. You'll probably increase your longevity and your quality of life, and I think it's a pretty cool stuff. And thank you, sir, for thinking of this, because it was your idea to get the nano-sized zeolite into the marketplace, and I'm not sure I'd ever heard about that before you. So good work.
It's pretty exciting. We have a bright team of people around us. And so it's good to be surrounded with bright people, and you kind of come together collectively. And next thing you know, you've got a product that's frankly a global sensation. And so it's fun, and we're deeply appreciative of all the advocates for it out there. It's a lot of fun to work with.
Is your largest market for the zeolite Japan?
If I had to do it on a per capita basis, I would say that, yes.
And they get it over there because of Fukushima and all that stuff. Is that, you think, the driving force behind that?
Absolutely. When I was first traveling to Japan for my business career back in the 1990s, long before Touchstone, you would often see bentonite clay, little sculptured like pieces, like almost like the size of, say, a golf ball or a tennis ball, that people would plop into their water pitcher in their refrigerator. And I was at a friend's home and asked him, and I said, "What's that about?" And he says, "Oh, it helps to soak up some of the heavy metals." And of course, we know zeolite is much more effective than something like a clay product, which has its own sort of other sets of issues. So for a long time, I deeply respect the fact that the Japanese have paid attention to the impact of environmental pollutants and heavy metals in the drinking supply.
Well, it's inspiring to hear, and it's to me, it's the most hopeful thing. It is an incredibly hopeful thing to be able to share with people that we have something that's inert and so effective and so inexpensive and easy to use that has such impact. So again, thanks for that. Any final closing remarks for today?
Now is as good a time, and maybe as important time of any, for folks to really pay attention to health issues. I know in the wintertime, people can get a little slack on maybe working out, and you're putting on some heavy clothes and it's cold outside and you're probably eating heavier foods. But if you just consider the impact of the cough, cold, and flu season in front of us, take care of yourself, right? Take care of it. If you're not consistent the rest of the year, now's the time to do it.
Well, thank you, sir. This has been absolutely wonderful. Mr. Eddie Stone, appreciate your time, my friend, and I look forward to another chat some other time.
Myself as well. Thank you, Winder.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.